Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another creative writing webinar. May the 4th be with you. I don't know if any of the other webinar people today were dressed up, but I'm dressed up as Han Solo today for Star Wars Day. I hope some of you are dressed up at home. We're having a lot of fun with it. You can't really tell because it's just that, I got my Han Solo gun and pants and everything on. So yes, I'm having fun with it today. I hope you guys are too. All right. So today, we're going to talk about research and what that has to do with creative writing. It can have a lot to do with creative writing. So I think we're going to have fun talking about it. Let's see who's here today in the participants. We have AG is here, Anya, Akshatha, Amelia, April, Austin, Chauncey, Evelyn, Haley, Isis, Gianna, Joseph, Kiara, Logan, Lorna, Luca, Mackenzie, Milo, Nalia, Ron Beer, Sambulo, Shauna, Simon, Skylar, and Sophia. Hi, everybody. Glad you guys are here today. And hello to everybody else that comes in as we get started. I already said there's a few questions in the Q&A box, so I'll go ahead and answer those really quick. Hi to everyone that said hi in there. One viewer, Lorna, asked, do we get to write examples in the Q&A box today? Yes. I'm going to have 3 activities for you today. And for each one, you'll write your answers in the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen and share your ideas. As always, if you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and ask those in the Q&A box too. So another attendee asked, can I hear you guys? No, the webinars are one directional. I can't see you. You guys can see me, but I can't see you or hear you. So if you have a question, type it into the Q&A box. And that's the one way you guys have to ask things of me or communicate to me. So go ahead and do that. Thank you. Somebody said happy Star Wars Day. Happy Star Wars Day to you too. Yes, somebody asked the question. Yes, I am dressed up as Han Solo. All right. So good. I think we have answered all the questions there. So let's get into it. Let's talk about research today. Here we go. Okay. So one of the first rules of good writing is write what you know. If you've ever heard this before, if you've ever studied writing, creative writing at all, you've probably heard this advice. Write what you know. Writing what you know makes your writing realistic. And what does that mean? What does it mean to write what you know? Well, most of us have a set of experiences or our ordinary lives that aren't too different day to day. There's where we live. There are the areas that we travel to for school or for work, or if you're an adult, the kind of the normal part of whatever country you live in. All of your experiences are usually in one main area. You may have traveled other places on vacation, or maybe you travel across to a different state or a different country to visit family or friends. But most of our lives are spent like in an area with similar experiences. And those are the things that we know the most about. We know our own house like the back of our hand. We could probably walk around in our house with the lights turned off and usually not run into too much stuff. We know our town or our area like really well. You could probably give somebody directions to get to your favorite restaurant or how to get to your school. But kind of the further and further you go from home, you don't know the area as well. You don't know as many people there, etc. So usually when you want to write about something for creative writing, the best thing to do is to try to write about things that you actually really know well, because then you can make it realistic. If you want to write about like a pet or like a cat or a dog in a story that you're writing, you can think about your own pet and think about things that your pet does. And then you can really make it realistic. If you were trying to write a pet into a story and you picked a type of pet that you had never encountered, that you never seen before, it might not be as realistic for your readers. If I tried to put an iguana in a story, well, I don't know that I've ever actually seen an iguana in real life. I don't know really, to tell you the truth, how fast they move, or I'd probably have to find out what they eat. But if I wanted to put a realistic pet in a story, I'd probably put a cat or a dog, pets that I've had in my life, because I know a lot about what they do. And I can easily make the things that that animal does realistic. But it's not always most interesting to us as writers, because we're creative, we're artists. We don't just want to be contained to the things that we already know about. What if we want to make a great story and have a lot of fun with it, but we want to write about iguanas? We want to write about a state that we've never been to. How do we make our writing realistic to people when we don't really know about it? Well, that's where research comes in. But before we get to doing some research and talking about research, I want you all to do activity number 1 here. The first thing we're going to do is think of and share something in the Q&A box you know a lot about that you could use as the basis for a fictional story. Fictional, of course, means not real, something made up, something that didn't happen in real life. So what would your story be about? Now, we're not going to write about a real thing that actually happened. You're not going to write about you or your family or anything else. But I want you to think of something you know a lot about, or something from your life that you could use as the basis for a fictional story. It kind of a jumping off place, something that you could kind of start with that and then go to a place where you're making something up. So in the Q&A box, write down maybe what the original idea is, but then what would your story be about? I'll give you an example. My parents live right next to a creek that has a lot of really good swimming holes on it. And there's these parts where you can jump off the rocks into the water and swim around, and it's really fun. It's right by their house. So that's a real life thing that I know a lot about. And I've been to this creek a lot of times, and I've gone swimming there a lot of times. So my example might be that there's this creek by my parents' house. And then the story is, what if there was, for some reason, somebody had dropped something really valuable while swimming there? What if 100 or 200 years ago, somebody went swimming there, or somebody tried to cross the creek with gold in their pockets and they dropped it? What if somebody went swimming in a creek like that and they found gold in the bottom of the creek? That could be a jumping off place for a really fun story. Maybe somebody's going to try to come get the gold back, and the main character has to escape down the creek with the gold. Could have a lot of fun with something like that. But it's based off of something real from my life. So as soon as you have your idea, write it in the Q&A box, and I will read some of them out loud. Let's see if we have any ideas typed up in here already. I'm going to scroll down. Sophia says, I don't know anything about Star Wars. That's okay. If you get around to watching the movies, you'll understand why people are dressed up the way they are today. Who's my favorite Star Wars character? I like Han Solo a lot. I also like the Jedi characters. All right, some people are starting to put some things in the Q&A box. Madeline says, a talking hamster. So I'm assuming that Madeline probably has a hamster at home, and that could be the basis for a story about a hamster that talks. I think that would be a lot of fun. Anya says that they know a lot about dogs. So that would be a great thing to write a story about. Let's see. Nalia says that their story would be about an Arctic wolf or horses. That's awesome. Now I'm really curious how you know a lot about Arctic wolves. Ethan says that he knows a lot about space. That's awesome. So that could be a great place to write a story. Let's see. Lorna says, kitties love to play. They will play with almost anything. Yeah, that could be a great place to start a story. You know a lot about cats. They're very playful. What kind of fictional story could we write that starts off with playful cats? Austin says, an abandoned high school with ghosts inside. I love it. Yeah, if you start off with like, maybe you know your school really well, you know what the layout of the building is like, you know what the rooms look like. You could use your school but then you put ghosts and monsters inside. That sounds really fun. Evelyn says the library. The library is something that they know well. So it's a starting place for a story about a kid who hates books but gets dumped at the library after school every day. Ooh, that sounds fun. I like that idea. Akshatha, I hope I'm saying that right. If I don't say that right, you can type how it's pronounced in the Q&A box and I'll make sure to say it correctly. But they say they know a lot about singers and movies, but also a lot about supernatural things. Oh, that sounds really cool. So you could start with like a singer or an actor, but they start encountering real life monsters and supernatural ghosts and things. Maybe they pretend that they know about those things in a movie, but then they encounter them in real life. That could be a really fun story. Then they say they could start with a singer who is actually a vampire. Nice. Let's see, what else do we have here? Haley says that their story will be about a meteorite crashing in the backyard. That's awesome. If that's something you've studied about a lot and you know your house and your backyards, that could make a great story. All right, Fallon says that they know about art. So this story would be an aspiring artist that wants to get a job in a big popular company, but she ends up going in another direction and starts working at an art store. Oh, that sounds really fun. There's a lot more description there, but that's a great start for a story. Chauncey says, moving from one state to another. Yeah. Sorry about that. Something fell off of a table in another place in the room. So Chauncey apparently has moved from one state to another in real life. That could be a great basis for a story. AG says, a piano that is alive, that can talk, compose, and play itself. He is friendly to you. That sounds really cool. I would read that story. All right, you guys are putting great examples in there. There's a lot of people in the seminar today, and you guys are putting a ton of examples in here. So I'm going to read all of those, but I don't have time to read all of them out loud right now. So I just want to let you know I will take a look at all of them. But we're going to move to the next part of this lesson, which is, what should you do if you don't know about something? So we talked about writing about what you know and coming up with examples based on what you're already familiar with. But what if you want to write about something that you don't know about? Research. But what does research really mean? It's looking for new information. It's investigating and finding out new things. There are a lot of ways to research. One example of research is just talking to people. You could talk to your parents or your grandparents or friends or family members and ask them about their experiences. Let's say you wanted to write about what it was like to live through World War II or another great, or a large war or conflict. You could talk to a family member that had been through it themselves. Getting real life examples and stories of what it was like to live during that time period, you could try to write a story that had a lot more realistic details. Let's say you want to write about another state that you've never been to. You can do lots of different ways to, research it and read things in books and online and whatnot. But talking to a person that's really lived there, they might be able to tell you details that you wouldn't find anywhere else. You could read about what the weather's like in Florida, for example, but a person telling you in real life what it's like in the summer with the humidity and the heat, they could probably tell you examples of things that had happened to them or what it was like to live there that an encyclopedia or something else wouldn't. With that said, there are some excellent resources out there for studying about places and things that you don't know about. So you can research to find the answer to a specific question, or you can do general research about a subject area. If you don't know what you should write about, you can also do some research to get an idea. So there's basically two ways that research can be helpful here. If you already have an idea for what you want to write about, research can be really helpful to go get specific pieces of information. Again, if I wanted to write about Florida, It's a place I've only been to a few times in my life. I'm probably missing a lot of information about what it's actually like to live there. I've seen, I think, on a TV commercial, like all the orange fields where they grow all the oranges to make orange juice, for example. But what's it really like to live in that area? I could do research to find out a lot of the details of what the area looks like, how many people live there, what are the names of the cities, and how long does it take to get from place to place? These are the kind of details that you would want in a story to make it realistic. If you write about a place that you've never been and you make it sound like you could get from New York City to Boston in like 30 minutes by driving, anybody that lives in that area would say, no, it takes a lot longer than that. These are the kind of details that you want to get right so people aren't sort of distracted or even upset about like, what? That's not accurate. That's not true. I live in Oregon. So if anybody writes a story or I see like a show or a movie that takes place in Oregon, it kind of bothers you when you see things and you're like, that's not the way it is. That's not where that is, or people don't talk like that or anything like that. You want to try to get as many of those details correct as possible. But on the other hand, let's say you don't even know what you want to write about. Let's say you want to get an idea. Sometimes it can be really tough as a writer that you want to write something, but you feel a little bit blank, or you feel like, you can't think of any good ideas. Well, that's where research is really helpful too, just to come up with an idea of something to write about. So here's our next activity. I want you to open up a new browser window, which means don't close this one or don't close the program that you're using to watch this right now. But if you're on a laptop computer or home computer, open up another window and type in maps.google.com. And you should probably still be able to hear me talking, so you can go ahead and do that. Or you can watch this for a little bit longer because I'm going to show you what I want you to do. But I want you to open up Google Maps, which you can get by typing maps.google.com into a new browser window. And then I want you to look around and find something interesting you could write about. I will show you an example. So here's Google Maps. And we're broadcasting here from the Delphian School in Oregon. I'll zoom out a little bit. You can see the whole state here. So this is Oregon. This is the whole state. But to find something fun or interesting to write about, you could go down here in the bottom corner. You'll notice it says satellite. You can click that and turn on satellite view, and then you see what it actually looks like from space with some words written over it. There's other views. If you click up here in the upper left-hand corner, you'll notice that it has terrain, for example. This is like if you've ever heard the term, a topographic map. This shows the mountains and the hills. It kind of shows where the rises and the falls in the land are. You can see the areas that look really flat and the areas where, these colors here show that these are hills with creeks and things in between them. So if you want to look at satellite view or terrain view, either one of those would be fine. Or you can just look at the regular view if you'd like. But I want you to open Google Maps and look around till you spot something you've never seen before or never noticed, or something that's interesting to you. I was looking around Google Maps once. I think I was looking for something else. And I noticed that there was, I noticed some lighthouses on the coast that I'd never noticed before. I think right here, if you see this on screen, I saw Tillamook Rock Lighthouse, and it was off in the middle of the ocean, and I'd never heard of that before. And I hovered over it, and I found some pictures, and I found something really interesting that I could study about and learn more about. And this lighthouse up on the top of this rock out in the middle of the ocean has a really interesting history. The people that built it had a lot of trouble building it, and now it's abandoned. And it looks really cool. To me, it looks really spooky. I use this as the basis for writing like a whole spooky story about what's going on with this lighthouse stuck out here in the middle of the ocean. Why is it really out there? What happened? What's going on with it now? It's kind of a whole spooky story about this lighthouse out in the middle of the ocean. And I had a lot of fun with that. So look around on Google Maps and try to find something in your area that you've never noticed before. or it could be in another state. You could go over across, you know, to a completely different state. You could look, if you were here in Oregon, you could look at Washington or California, but try to find something here you've never seen before and come up with an idea for a story that you could write about it. That was my idea. I found this lighthouse out in the ocean, and I want to write a scary or spooky story about maybe ghosts or maybe something out in this abandoned lighthouse. You know, looking around, you might see a mountain, and you might write about Mount Hood or another area of the state you've never been to. So go ahead and type that in the Q&A box when you've had an idea, and I will read some of those ideas out loud. Let's see what we have so far. We have one viewer. Brando says, I just came in. What are we doing? We're talking about research today, Brando. We're talking about how you can use research to get ideas for stories, or how you can use research to find out more about something that you want to write about, how it kind of works both ways. All right. Milo asks, can I use Google Earth? Yeah, Google Earth or Google Maps. They're both really good map resources that are online. So go ahead and use either one of those. Evelyn says they found an art gallery in Iran. Wow, that sounds really cool. Shanna is looking around at Washington, D.C. Amelia says, is there a book from Heron Books I need for this class? No, I think there might be a download that came with it, but this class is not working out of a specific course. So you're fine. You don't need to download anything to do this activity today. Joseph says, I thought the Delphian School was in California. No, we have like some sister schools that also use a similar schooling method, but the first Delphian school is here in Oregon. Yeah, Sheridan, Oregon. So we're kind of out here in the country a little bit. Our school is up on the top of a hill in the Coast Range of Oregon. So yeah, feel free to look us up on Google Maps. You'll be able to find some pictures there. Let's see. Haley says they are researching about the historic Fourth Ward Park in Atlanta. That's very cool. Evelyn is researching about a tea shop in London. That's awesome. Lauren says, what about Chicago? Yeah, you could definitely look for things in Chicago on Google Maps. That'd be really awesome. Looks like AG found a Panda Express, and they're talking about panda waiters in a Panda Express. That sounds really fun. So I'm assuming they're real life pandas that are serving food at a Panda Express. I could see a whole story about you like going to Panda Express and you find this one random restaurant off on a side road and you go in and there's real pandas in there. I would definitely read that story. Let's see. April says that they're writing a book about pirates. That's awesome. Did you find something about pirates on Google Maps? Chauncey found a park in San Francisco. That sounds really cool. Akshafa found Santorini in Greece. That sounds really cool. If I remember correctly, that's the city that has all the blue domes on top of the buildings that are like white. I've seen pictures of Santorini. It looks really cool. Austin found a town named Sweet Home in Oregon. I think I've heard of that. I've never been there, but Sweet Home. I wonder why it's called that. Maybe something to do with candy? Maybe something else? That could be the basis for an interesting story. Fallon says, Sabine National Forest in Texas. It's on the border with Louisiana. There's a river right next to it. There's also the Sabine Wildlife Management Area on the other side of the river in Louisiana. Maybe some sort of mystery or supernatural thing that whenever you cross the river, something happens. Oh, I love that idea. I love stories about wilderness or the forest and there's weird things going on. That sounds like a great story. I would read that. AG, it sounds like they're looking at Death Valley, the national park in California. And in their story, there's tons of heat. And unless you can stand the heat, you die. And it's impossible. That sounds like a fun story. ISIS is looking at Brooklyn, New York, and they're finding lots of restaurants. Yeah, you could write a story about restaurants on Brooklyn. That'd be great. Looks like Amelia found Mount Everest on Google Maps. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Another attendee is looking at Golden Gate Bridge. Very cool. Milo found something called the World Food Program in Australia. I wonder what that's about. Ethan is looking at Japan. Isis found an interesting looking school in Brooklyn. That's awesome. Looks like Joseph is looking up. Yeah, Joseph looks like he was looking at Delphi some more, the Delphian school. Yes, we're in Yamhill County. That's our county name. It's in rural Oregon. So yeah. Joseph also says, can I research about Universal Studios? Sure. Yeah, that's in California near Los Angeles. Brando is looking at Devil's Mountain in Berlin. Wow, that sounds cool. Never heard of that. Holly is looking at Machu Picchu. I think that's in South America. Wait, is that in South America? I think so. Something I need to research a little bit more. Another attendee is looking at the Matterhorn, which is a mountain in Europe. What was the website again? Google Maps. You could search for that, or you could type into another window of your browser, maps.google.com. So yeah, you can also, you can continue using this as a resource after the seminar is over, of course. It's really fun to look up things on Google Maps to find towns or cities you've never seen before. Also, if you have the program, Google Earth is another program. I think you might need to download something for that. So check with your parents if it's okay. But Google Earth has like really highly detailed photography of the whole planet. And you can spend a lot of time on there just finding really interesting beaches and mountains and forests and all kinds of really cool looking cities. It's very three-dimensional. I was looking on Google Earth once at something in Canada, and I found a whole city on the eastern part of Canada that everything was labeled with French names. And the more I researched about it, it looked like this town, it was either still part of France or owned by France. It's been a while, so I'd probably need to look back again. But just through browsing around on Google Maps, there's this whole town in Canada that's still like a French town. And I'm not talking about the part of Canada that just speaks French. I think this is a town that's still owned by France, which was like, whoa, that could lead down a whole rabbit hole of either writing about this real life place and making a fictional story. Or my other idea was to write just a story about a town that's still part of another country or another place, just kind of hidden in the middle of another country or community. Your imagination can really be set off just by looking at maps. So yeah. Amelia also says, I found my house. Yeah, that's a fun thing to look at. Austin is researching about the Bahamas, and there's different colored water there. Yeah, maybe some really bright blue water. Shanna is looking at Devil's Punch Bowl on the Oregon coast. Yeah, that's a really cool place. All right. And the last thing I wanted to tell you about too, I don't know how many people have these at their houses anymore, but if you have one, an atlas is also a great resource. Yes, this book is giant. You can see how big it is, but atlases are literally map books. You can use them to look at, for example, look at these giant double pages. This is bigger than like most of my body. But you can look at these maps. This one is of Spain and Portugal. You can find all kinds of fascinating things on these pages. They've got great photography. This is a satellite picture of Asia. Detailed maps of Antarctica. So if you can get your hands on an atlas, it's a really great resource for researching a physical location or just coming up with ideas for what to write about. So I highly recommend it. Okay, let's move on to the next part. So reading encyclopedias or historical books is another great way to research. You can find information on a specific subject, but it's a great way to come up with story ideas too. So again, you can take this from either direction. If not a lot of people have paper encyclopedias at their house anymore, but if you do have one, they look like this. This is the CI to CZ book of an encyclopedia. Some of you may not have ever seen an encyclopedia before. I wouldn't be surprised because we don't have a lot of them around anymore. But they are books about pretty much every topic. This one is about, it's alphabetical. It says colonial life in America. And it's a well-researched article that just has tons of information about what it was like in the colonies in America when, you know, before America was even a country. It's got all kinds of color photographs and usually well-researched information that you can kind of trust to be true, probably. And usually the articles are really long. They've got tons of great stuff in there. So if you can find an encyclopedia, a real paper one, they can be great resources for looking up information on a topic. Or you can just browse through an encyclopedia to come up with ideas for what to write about. Now, because a lot of us don't have encyclopedias anymore, we can use online encyclopedias too. So I know a lot of people, your parents or other people might have mixed feelings on the most famous current encyclopedia. It's called Wikipedia, but it can still be a good source of information. Why Wikipedia is kind of a controversial source of information is that regular people like me or you are the people who write the articles that are on this website. So it is possible for there to be incorrect information on an article about any subject. But there's a lot of people that are editors that like to go in there and try to edit the information and make it accurate. There's usually more people trying to do the right thing and put the correct information than there are people on there trying to put the false information about something on there. But sometimes mistakes still do make their way in. So the best thing to do when using an online encyclopedia is you have to try to, you know, use logic when reading them or researching using them. You can try to look up a piece of information in more than one source, more than one encyclopedia, or more than one website and compare them and see if something makes sense or not. You can try to see if the information within an article makes sense. But if you're not comfortable using Wikipedia or an encyclopedia source that has content written by ordinary people, you can try to find an online encyclopedia that's written mostly just by experts. The only problem would be that sometimes you might have to pay for them, or that the number of articles they have is a lot smaller, just because, you know, when you're paying real life experts and people to write the articles, it's going to take a lot longer to get to every topic than if you just let anybody contribute to them. But if you search around a little bit, you can sometimes find websites online. I found one that's meant for young people. This one is kids.kiddle.co. That's kids.kiddle.co. And it looked like a good source of information, that they don't use terms that are too difficult. And looking through it, it seemed like there was a lot of, you know, good, free encyclopedia information. So if you wanted to research about something like Oregon, you could click on, for example, Oregon Facts for Kids. And this article has a lot of good basic information about the state. Everything from what the geography of the state is like. Here's the map of, the flag of Oregon. It has information about plants and animals, etc. The climate, which is like what the weather is like all the time. So the people that, lived here first, and then, settlers. So lots of great information. Again, kids.kittle.co. It looked like a good basic online encyclopedia. So if there's a specific topic you want to write about, you can use online encyclopedia resources like that to get more information and try to find specific facts or details that you could put in your story to make it more real and more accurate to readers. But on the other hand, you can also use it to come up with ideas for a story. So if you already know what you're writing about, then go ahead and use encyclopedias to try to get more details and more facts. But if you don't know what you want to write about, here's another exercise that you can do to come up with an idea. So for this activity, open a new browser window, and we're going to use that encyclopedia, kids.kittle.co, and search for one of these topics. You could search for pirate, cowboy, princess, astronaut, or any other job, one of those, classic job titles that you'd like. Read through the article until you find an idea for a story. So you might bring up an article on pirate facts and read down through that article until you find some interesting piece of information you've never heard before. That kind of sparks an idea for a story in your mind. You can also read about cowboys or princesses or astronauts or whatever you like. I was reading an encyclopedia article on astronauts, and as I read through it, I was reminded that some of the first living creatures that were sent into space were animals. We sent, for example, I think the Russian cosmonauts, which is the other word for astronaut, they sent dogs into space before they ever sent people because they wanted to see what would happen. And I started thinking about dogs in space or other animals in space. It got me thinking about, what if somebody wrote a story about all these animals that went up into space, and what if some of them stayed up there and became, more intelligent, and then you had animals and spaceships. Well, that's just the start of a story. It's I don't have anywhere for that story to go yet, but it kind of sparked my imagination of like, what if there was a whole space station full of basically what are pets? What if it had hamsters and cats and dogs? And what if that space station was still up there today? What if it was first sent up in the 60s, but they were still up there and they were maybe more advanced than our spaceships were? What if the government was trying to hide the fact that there was this space station full of pets? Well, we could write a really fun story based on that. Or one of you guys could write that story because I haven't written it yet. Anyway, so open up the encyclopedia, search for one of these topics, and read through it until you find something fun or interesting that sparks an idea for a story. And I will read some of those as soon as you guys write them down in the Q&A box. Let's see what you guys come up with. I bet it'll be something fun. While you guys do that, I'm going to read a few more of the things you typed in for the last one. Ron Beer found the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Japan. I did not realize that there was a Wizarding World of Harry Potter theme park in Japan. That's good to know. That's fun. Yeah, Fallon says something else about, I think they're referring to Wikipedia. Some of those websites, they also will have a lot of complicated or complex words. Yeah, it can be really confusing. If you're reading an encyclopedia article that's meant for adults, they'll use a lot of complicated, difficult words that can make the topic really confusing. And that confusion can make you not want to read more about that topic. So it's usually good to try to find a source that's meant for, younger people, because they'll try to use more straightforward, simple language that you can get the information without feeling confused based on all the complicated words that they're showing off. When I read about articles on Wikipedia, when I'm researching something, I often have a lot of words that I don't even know at an adult reading level because the writers will use a lot of complicated terms. So try to find a source where you know most of the words that they're using so you can spend your time learning more and not feeling confused about everything that they're saying. All right. So Evelyn is researching about actors because she loves acting. That's very awesome. Austin is, I guess, researching probably about an astronaut, and the idea is space food that comes alive when you put water on it. That sounds really cool. Gianna says, do we have to write? Well, yeah, if you'd like to. You don't have to. But after reading through your encyclopedia article, if you find something that sparks an idea for a story, go ahead and write that in the Q&A box if you want to. So Milo, it looks like he was searching about paleontologist, which is a type of scientist that studies dinosaurs and bones. And he found facts about Jack Horner, a famous paleontologist. And what if he found a fossilized time machine and dinosaurs started popping up everywhere? That sounds amazing, and I will definitely read that story if somebody writes it. That sounds awesome. Shanna is researching about bakers and pastry chefs. That's awesome. Very cool. Looks like Evelyn had the idea for a story about an actor. Well, a girl tries to be an actor like her parents, but she can't speak clearly. It looks like that has already sparked an idea there for a story that you could write, and that sounds awesome. Chauncey says, I am researching about news reporters because I watch the news every day. That's very cool. Haley is researching about Princess Victoria. Very cool. Yeah, so we'll spend the last few minutes here. Brando says they're reading about engineering. Very cool. Yeah, so what story could we write based on what we find in that research? Yeah, a lot of famous writers, they start off researching something just because it kind of gets their interest, and it can go a lot of interesting areas. You can find yourself, to use the term from Alice in Wonderland, going down the rabbit hole. You start off following some idea, and it kind of goes really weird or interesting places. You find yourself, especially in an online encyclopedia, they use a link to some other topic that's related to the one you're reading about. You started off reading about cowboys, and it mentions something about Spain, so you click on Spain. And then you find yourself reading about bullfighting or Spanish food. And then you find the thing that really goes, whoa, I never knew about that before. And then a whole story just kind of sparks in your mind, and you go, whoa, what if I wrote about bulls fighting back against bullfighters? And then you can write something really fun that has some real historical or factual information in it, but it's still a fictional, fun, creative story. Let's see if we came up with any more ideas from our research here. Gianna says that Oregon has cool lizards. Yeah, we see lizards and salamanders and different little creatures sometimes. I wonder what the biggest lizards we have in Oregon are. I only see pretty much small lizards and salamanders in Oregon. So that gets me already wondering, maybe I'll look up what's the biggest ones that we have there. Maybe fictional lizard type creatures like dragons have been hiding in Oregon all along. Maybe because of all of our forests and mountains and wilderness, maybe this is the best place for dragons to hide and not be found by civilization. You could write a whole story about that. Austin, it says that apparently if you rearrange the letters of Neil Armstrong, a famous astronaut, you can get alien and a lot of other random letters out of that. So, I guess Neil Armstrong, the A, and then Neil backwards spells alien. So what if Neil Armstrong was actually an alien? That could be a great story. Or what if Neil Armstrong blasted off into space and then got switched with an alien and the alien came back to Earth? That could be a great story too. I'm going to read a couple more examples here, and then I think we're out of time. Fallon searched for inventor. And at some point, it gave an example of clocks and how they were invented and more ways to make them or better ones. This made me think about an inventor character that's trying to make artificial sight. They could use echolocation or maybe just something that finds what particles are in the air and uses that information plus echolocation to create more realistic images. And they have a lot of really awesome ideas written down there. So that's a great example. You start with one topic and it kind of goes some interesting places that you might not have originally ever thought of. That's really awesome. Evelyn has a great idea too, and we're going to end off here. Evelyn says you can also look at Google Images and find a cool picture you want to write about. That's a great point. Yeah, if you just go to Google Images and you type in inventor or cowboy or anything else, you can sometimes find really cool pictures and use those as like the basis for a character you want to write about, or it can spark a whole idea or direction for a story. So great example. All right, so as always, keep on writing, keep on practicing, keep on improving your writing. Thank you guys for sharing some of your ideas today. That's all the time we have, but thank you for sharing all those amazing examples. I'm gonna keep on reading through them. So thanks for being here today, and I'll see you at our next creative writing class on Wednesday. Bye, everybody.